Quick shout out to my patrons. Without you guys, this wouldn't be possible, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Hey y'all, it's Kate from the Literary Apothecary, and today I'm going to be talking about 10 authors whose writing I'm absolutely obsessed with. I got this idea when I joined one of these writers' Discord servers, and I was like, everyone needs to know about this writer, and then I kept thinking of other authors that I also wanted to highlight, so I thought, let me do a video with a whole bunch of these in here. So my only parameters that I gave myself for this was I wanted to keep it to 10, no more than 10, and I wanted to stick to authors that I've read at least 2 books from. There are other authors here that I absolutely love and adore, but I've only read 1 book from them. And then there's other authors that I absolutely adore, but I don't know, I just needed to stick to 10, so I made the decision of 10. Some of them are popular authors, some of them are maybe not so popular, some are current, some are not current. So let's just get into it. These are no particular order. It's not like my least favorite to my favorite or my favorite to my least favorite. These are in a random order of when I was thinking of authors when they came to my mind. First up we have actually a duo group, M.A. Carrick, who is actually a combination of 2 different authors, and they wrote the Rook and the Rose series. Right now we have 2 out of the 3 books, Mask of Mirrors and The Liar's Knot, and I absolutely love this series so much and this writing. They've got this incredible world building going on in these books, expansive world where you, at least I reading it, still know exactly where we are and where we're going and where we've been and what's gonna happen, and it's just incredible workmanship with the world building. And also dynamic characters. We have good and we have bad characters, but it seems like, for the most part at least, each character has maybe both a little good and bad in them to mimic, you know, an actual human. Not everyone has a little bit of good and a little bit of bad in them, and it's what they choose to act on that makes them good or bad. Not one person is 100% good and 100% evil. Yeah, it just matters what part of yourself do you act on and do you present to others. And then I also, for each one of these authors, I found a quote that stood out to me or that I absolutely loved from their writing. So for M.A. Carrick, this quote comes from The Mask of Mirrors, and it says, "Truth is the thread that binds us and the hope that hangs us." And that just pulled straight at my heart, and just what I believe it also is in The Liar's Knot as kind of a reflection, but it just speaks to that series so well. Next up we have Fonda Lee, the author of the Green Bone Saga, which is Jade City, Jade War, and Jade Legacy. Now, so far I've only read 2 out of these 3 books, but I absolutely loved them. And the Green Bone Saga is getting a TV adaptation for it, so I can't wait for that because we absolutely need it. One of the things that I love about Fonda Lee's writing is that it's written so well you can imagine it in your brain. It's like a TV series written out on page. She's got believable characters that you could believe are real life characters, a real life world with magic sprinkled in. Like, it's fantasy, yes, because there's magic in it and it's a fantastical world, but it feels like it's real life just with magic woven in, and the way that she weaves that magic into this life and the story makes it so believable because the magic isn't front and center. I mean, it is, but it's not. It feels like the story is more important than the magic. Even though the magic is from the Jade, and that's, you know, obviously Jade City, Jade War, Jade Legacy, a key focal point of the series, it's more the power and everything that surrounds the magic than the actual magic itself. Next, and our quote from Fonda Lee comes from Jade War, which is book 2. That is, flowers grow even in the desert. So too, there is nowhere love cannot happen. And that just, I love it so much. Our next author up is Josiah Bancroft. Now, Mr. Bancroft, Josiah, wrote the Books of Babel series, which you've heard about me talk about so much on this channel. That includes Senlin Ascends, Arm of the Sphinx, Hod King, and Fall of Babel, which just came out last November. I absolutely love this writing so much. Josiah Bancroft has this incredibly unique writing style where, to me, it feels both modern and classical. It feels both whimsical and a little bit grimdark, and not so happy. It's just so unique. I don't even have the right words to describe it, but if you've read even book 1, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And his prose is just beautiful. It's not flowery, but it's straight to the point, yet it just hits you in the emotions at the right times, and I just wouldn't change it for anything. The prose just is very well polished, especially for this was a debut series for Josiah Bancroft. Senlin Ascends was his debut novel, and to have prose so polished that way is just immaculate. I absolutely adore it. So our quote for Josiah Bancroft comes from Senlin Ascends. It says, "The truth, when finally told, will often sound strange, whereas a lie is so often familiar." And the thing with Josiah Bancroft's writing is that it feels... So the thing with Josiah Bancroft's writing style is that it's both whimsical and a bit grimdark at the same time, and you see a quote like this quote about truth, and you think, well, this takes place in a fantastical world, the Tower of Babel. This can't be applicable to real life. But then once you start to think about it for a minute, you realize that it absolutely can be applied to real world. All of the lessons and the morals and the principles from the Books of Babel can be applied to real life, because after all, writers get their ideas for fantasy from real life. So that's one of the things that I love about Josiah Bancroft's writing, is that he makes you think about real life in this crazy world of the Tower of Babel. Our next author up is Nicholas Eames, and holy cow, y'all. So Nicholas Eames is writing the Banned series. Right now we have 2 out of the 3 books, Kings of the Wild and Bloody Rose. And I had Nicholas Eames on a live show last year with Jesse at the Bookish Mom and Andrew at Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and we had so much fun. Nicholas Eames is the nicest guy ever, the coolest guy ever, and I can't wait to have him back when he finally gets to release the 3rd book. He was such a good sport and was so nice and answered all of our questions and stayed way later and talked just in general about books and books that he loves reading, and it was just so amazing being able to talk to him. Some of the things that I love about Nicholas Eames' writing is the use of humor in his books. He uses lots of dad jokes, and it was just a very particular sense of humor in these books that just really reached out to me. He's got realistic characters. So his heroes in the Kings of the Wild are now middle-aged men. In their, early 20s, they were the heroes of the world. They went and saved people. They were a band that went and fought monsters. They were mercenaries, and they saved everyone. Now they're middle-aged men where they're fat and they drink and they, have fart jokes, and they're married with kids and they're off to save one of their kids, and they're just so realistic in a way that you don't often see in fantasy. you don't see those fat retired heroes coming back. And I just loved seeing that. And he also has this incredibly unique way of incorporating pop culture into his writing. So the band series incorporates pop music and rock music and grunge music into the prose in the characters and the band names and the weapon names and the places, the battle names. So we've got kind of the late 70s, the 80s, and I'm told that the third book is kind of going to be 90s grunge, kind of. So I can't wait to see how this all plays together. But I just absolutely love his writing. So our quote for Nicholas Eames comes from Kings of the Wild, which is book 1 in this series. Then again, if something sounded ridiculous in your head, then voicing it aloud rarely did it any favors. And that quote made me laugh so much. Our next author, I cannot talk about authors that I'm obsessed with without mentioning Diana Gabaldon, author of the Outlander series. I'm not going to name all the books because that would take forever. There's 9 of them right now, plus the side books that she's got. She's got Lord John Grey series going. She's got the cookbooks. She's got the companion books, and there's more books coming, more side books coming. So there's too many books to name, but y'all know how obsessed I am with the Outlander series. So I couldn't not mention her here. Of course, our characters, Jamie Fraser, Claire, even though she's not my favorite, Lord John Grey, Roger, Brianna, Ian, Fergus, Marcelly, Murtaugh, just Dougal. I mean, just such great characters that felt like they completely embodied the time that they were supposed to be written for, the time that their story took place in, and the places. Especially characters like Dougal Mackenzie is Jamie Fraser's uncle, and he's back in the 1700s in Scotland. He's the war chief of his clan, and he just embodies the way that I imagine a war chief of a Scottish clan in the 1700s would be. He's just everything that I would imagine that to be. And I envy her being able to write characters so well and so believable. Also, speaking of history, the integration of history into her plot and her romance and her adventures. And people say, Outlander's a romance book. Yes, there's romance. There's lots of romance. There's even sex scenes. But it's not all romance. There's adventure, and there's history, and there's politics, and just the way that she integrates everything together so seamlessly into one book, and obviously a series of books, is, in my opinion, just incredible. Our quote for Diana Gabaldon comes from Outlander, book 1. This is from Jamie Fraser. I know this quote by heart, and every time I read it or hear it in the show, it gives me tears. It gives me goosebumps. So I apologize ahead of time if I get a tear just in this quick minute. You'll hear my voice shake. I can already feel the goosebumps starting just thinking about it. He says, "I can bear pain myself, but I could not bear yours. That would take more strength than I have." And now I'm gonna stop talking about that before I cry, but y'all know how much I love Diana Gabaldon. So that is 5 authors. So we are halfway through this video. Thank you all for bearing with me so far. I hope you're enjoying this. Next up we have Katherine Arden, who wrote the Winter Night trilogy, which includes The Bear and the Nightingale, The Girl in the Tower, and The Winter of the Witch. And this is a new favorite to me. Thanks to Evie, she was only Evie, for introducing me to this series. I absolutely love it, and I can't wait to reread it already to see everything that I missed, because I love it so much, and I really enjoyed the experience of listening to the audiobooks, but I know I missed so much. So some of the things that I love about Katherine Arden's writing is her unique story. It uses Russian folktale, which you don't often see in fantasy writing. And I just love the way that it embodies that story. You've got lovable characters, noble characters, even the ones that you're not supposed to love. At least I had a little bit of sympathy for at least one point in this trilogy. And then it's just, there's magic in it, yes, but it also has just this magical feel to it. I just feels like a fairy tale, and I just get lost in the magical feeling of it every single time I read it. And our quote comes from book 1, Baron the Nightingale, and this is another character speaking to our main character. He says, "It is easy to die, harder to live," which is so true, and something that you hear a lot of characters mention that are going through depression. You hear a lot about that in the mental health talk, so I just had to mention that now in our mental health awareness month. As I'm filming this now, this video may not come out until June. I haven't decided when I'm going to release it yet, but this is now available to watch ahead of time for my patrons. So by the time at least my patrons see this, it'll still be Mental Health Awareness Month. Our next author up is Mary Shelley. I've read Frankenstein and Matilda from her so far. There's so many other works written by Mary Shelley that I can't wait to get to, but just those two alone have me having to add her to this list. Her incredible prose. She has such a elegant writing style that I just envy so much. I wish I could write like Mary Shelley. And at least for me, she made me feel for every single one of her characters. There wasn't a character that I did not feel sympathy for at one point or another. Even the characters that you're not supposed to feel sympathy for, the characters that you're supposed to not like, I still felt sympathy for all of them. So Mary Shelley goes on this just for the fact that she poured so much emotion and humanity into these books, especially Frankenstein, that's about a monster. She made him feel so human that I can't not add her to this list. Speaking of Frankenstein, our Mary Shelley quote comes from Frankenstein. "Seek happiness in tranquility and avoid ambition, even if it be only the apparently innocent one of distinguishing yourself in science and discoveries." And it's just, I love her writing so much. We're almost there, y'all. Just 3 more. Hang with me because these are great ones. Our next author up is Erin Morgenstern, who wrote The Starless Sea and The Night Circus. Now, while I loved The Starless Sea 10 times more than The Night Circus, I still really love The Night Circus, so I'm adding her to this list. And Erin Morgenstern's writing, for me, we've got, again, such magical prose. You just feel the magic in the prose. And she has a way of drawing you into her world and the story and not letting you go. Especially for The Starless Sea. I read this book, I ate it up, I can't wait to reread it many times. This is going to become an annual read for me. But as soon as I finished that first read, I wanted to reread it instantly. I did not want to leave that world at all. It's not often that I feel sad when a book is ending because I don't want to leave that world. Because there's so many books that I want to read that I'm like, okay, that was amazing, that was fantastic, but let's move on to the next book. But this book just will not let me go. I read this last March in 2021, over a year now, and I still think about this book to this day. It's just that good. And our quote comes from The Starless Sea, and it says, "It tastes older than stories. It tastes like myth." And that was exactly how I felt reading The Starless Sea. It felt like a timeless tale that's been told time and time again, even though it was just released, 2021, 2020, I forget when it was, 2019, I don't remember when it was released. I read it last year. It's new, it's still modern, but it feels timeless, like it's been around for hundreds of years. And that's the power of Erin Morgenstern's writing for me. Our penultimate author, our second to last author in this video, is none other than Sir Terry Prachett. So, Sir Terry Prachett wrote the Discworld universe. I'm not going to sit here and name all of the books because we would literally be here all day long. He's written so many Discworld books. He's also co-authored Good Omens with Neil Gaiman, which I haven't read yet, but I've read several Discworld books in the City Watch series, and I am absolutely obsessed. I need to get back into these books. I've fallen off because my TBRs have just become uncontrollable. Someday this year, I'll get back to the City Watch. Terry Prachett uses humor in an amazing way. His books are so funny, but it's that particular sense of humor that if you don't get it, you won't find it funny. But if you do get it, you think it's absolutely hilarious and the best thing in the world. It reminds me a lot of Monty Python skits that they used to do all the time. It's got that kind of humor and that kind of wit. His wit is undeniable. Terry Prachett was an absolute genius in writing. He has a way of writing about society, real world society, in this fantastical, farcical, yet extremely accurate way that you know exactly what he's getting at, even though this takes place in this crazy Discworld with all these different monsters and different species that we don't find in our everyday world. And his books are just so endearing. So I had to mention Terry Prachett here. Our quote comes from Guards, which is book 1 in the City Watch series and our Discworld universe series as a whole. And the quote says, "A good bookshop is just a genteel black hole that knows how to read." And y'all, as fellow book nerds, you know exactly what he's getting at in this quote. We've all gotten lost in the bookstore like this, where you go in looking for one book and you spend hours there, or an hour, you know, much longer than you had planned, and you come away with probably more books than you had planned also. Just the way that he can just get right at what you know to be in the real world, in his crazy fantastical world of Discworld, is just undeniable. And our last author here, last but definitely not least, Toni Morrison. I call her the goddess of writing. She's written many novels. The ones that I have read most often include Beloved, The Bluest Eye, and a memoir, I believe it's a memoir, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. She has such beautiful emotional prose. She packs all of this emotion into her prose that you just can't help but feel those emotions. She has real life characters in real life situations in these fictional novels, and at least for me, often I forget that it's fiction because it's written so well and so clear as day. You can just imagine it, and I have to remind myself that even though these are situations people have gone through in real life, this exact story is fictional. These characters, I know, do not exist. And to have to remind myself of that, a reader that reads books every day, that gets lost in fictional worlds all the time, is a true testament to Toni Morrison's writing. My quote for Toni Morrison actually comes from her memoir, which is nonfiction, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, which just is incredible. This quote says, "Like most children, I thought if I would face the worst danger voluntarily, I would forever have power over it." And that just hits me in the gut, because if you've ever had a not ideal childhood, whether it's the worst childhood you've ever heard of or just parts of your childhood, you know exactly what she's getting at in that quote. And it just, as you can see, it's bringing tears to my eyes. It just pulls at my heartstrings and hits me in the gut. And that is Toni Morrison's writing in a nutshell. Every one of her books does that to me. So I hope y'all loved this video as much as I loved making it. These are all writers that I am obsessed with their writing, are auto-buy authors for me. Writers that I would read any kind of book that they wrote, no matter what it is. I will read it. I will buy it. I will add it to my collection. I will buy entire bookshelves if I need to, just to add their books to my collections. I always welcome books from these writers. If y'all are thinking of sending me books at any time and you don't know what book to send, I don't even care if I already own the book. I'll still add it to my collection. So if you haven't read books by these authors and you loved what you heard about them, highly, highly, highly recommend it. If you've read some books by these authors and you want to read more books and you need recommendations, let me know and I am happy to give you recommendations. Also, in the comments below, let me know what writers you are obsessed with. What writing styles are you obsessed with? Who is an auto-buy author for you? As always, my Patreon and my Discord information are in the description below. There's no pressure to join either, but on my Discord, I'd love to have a conversation about these authors and just authors that people are obsessed with in general. I love talking about authors and books. As I mentioned earlier, my patrons are getting a sneak peek of this video. They're getting early access to this video, so they'll be able to watch it weeks in advance of everyone else. So if you want that kind of access, come join my Patreon. It's only $1 a month. Keep reading, and I love you all to the moon and back. Bye.